Hey students, here in the metal shop today, and a really important thing we want to come to understand in here is that material is money, right? All those little bits of metal that we're going to practice welding on, all the pieces that we're going to pour, all those pieces of copper we're going to form into flowers and repose pieces, those all cost money. So one thing we want to do is to reduce the waste, we want to reuse what we can, and we want to recycle. So I've got an old aluminum small gas engine block here, and I'm going to recycle it. We're going to take a traditional method, and we're going to break it down using a hammer into small pieces that can fit into the crucible. So you can see our crucible is filled with fragments of aluminum. There's a lot of empty negative space in there, so we got a lot more room once this gets melted. So we're going to melt the metal in the crucible. We'll use the crucible tongs to pull out the crucible when it's red hot. We'll use a crucible ladle to hold the crucible, and we're going to pour molten metal into the negative space in this ingot mold. We'll pour the metal in there, we'll give it a day to cool down, and we'll end up with aluminum ingots that we're going to then use to make sand castings. All right, let's light this forge and get this underway. Crucible has been charged, top is on. We're burning natural gas, so we're going to turn on the fan. We're going to start this up. All right, you can hear the crucible roar. That knows we're good. Once it heats up a little bit, we'll come over, we'll turn up the gas, we'll turn up the fan, and we'll get this aluminum to about 1200 degrees before we pour it into the ingot molds. Looks like we're melting. All right, we're going to set up, get our equipment ready to pour this molten metal.
We didn't catch the setup on camera, but here's everything you'll need.
All right, folks, we're ready to pour this metal. It's you can peek inside, and we got a crucible full of molten metal. We're pretty hot right now, so I'd say over 1200 degrees. But one thing that's really interesting is that, especially in the marine environment where we live, pieces of steel can absorb a lot of moisture just from the air. So before we pour molten metal into these guys, we want to heat them up. And you can see right here, you can see the metal is, moisture is evaporating off the metal. If we didn't heat them up, potentially you could pour molten metal in there, the moisture would turn to steam, rapidly expand, and you'd have metal going everywhere. So a little precaution here, we're just going to heat these up for a minute, and look at all that moisture coming off of it. You don't really think of steel being like a sponge and absorbing all that, but you sure do, especially in a place like this. All right, we're getting close. All right. Up.
Remember to communicate with your partner for each action. Also remember to insert the crucible into the ladle at an angle as to not have the crucible drop and possibly damage the crucible and or splatter molten metal.
All right, this metal all is recycled metal, and I can see it's pretty dirty. We've got a lot of what we're going to call dross or slag on the top. This is all that, you know, it was a motor, so it had a lot of oil in it, and we're going to scrape off the top. And then it's still pretty dirty, so I'm going to take borax, sprinkle it on top, and that's going to act as a chemical sponge. It's going to pull out the impurities, largely from the air, but also from its former life as a small gas engine. I'm going to scrape off the dross. This stuff is going to be garbage, but we've got a nice crucible filled with metal. We'll line up our spout. Put a pin across so there's no spillage. I'm going to pour it into the ingot molds. Well, I can see, looks like we missed one of the bearings when we tore it apart. There's a little steel ring down there. But an hour ago, it was a broken down engine block, and now we have 5 ingots ready to go. Foundry is, the casting process is exhausting, right? Lots of labor goes into this. And once you're done pouring, there's nothing you want to do like take off the leather, take off your helmet, and get a breath of fresh air and a drink of water. Let's put the stuff away. We'll let that stuff cool down. The dross is garbage. We'll let our ingots solidify, and we'll pull them out of the molds tomorrow. Whew. Water faucet.